chocolate and peanut butter in my mouth. So be like, yeah.
I know the feeling.
All right, so we'll start this meeting. Call to order right at 6:30. No Schulte yet. That seems like he said he wasn't going to be here, but maybe he'll pop in a few minutes. So now it's time for the open forum. I think quite a few of you are on the agendas, but if there's anything you want to address the council for, now is the time to do it. So I ask that if you have something to say, come up to the microphone and identify yourself and then go for it. Everybody good? Okay, lots of nodding. All right, so we'll close the open forum and move on to the consent agenda.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand. I apologize. I'd like to say one thing,
Okay,
if I may.
Yeah.
Apologize. I just want to introduce myself. My name is Michael McHugh. I've thrown my hat in the ring for the Planning Commission. I've lived up here for 14 years. I've worked on several boards for the school. I've been the union president. I have interest in government, city government, and I thought that this would be an opportunity to serve the community and develop skills and learn new things. So I just wanted to introduce myself, and I appreciate any consideration, and I would do my best to serve our city. I just want to say thank you and hello.
great.
Thank you. Thank you for
We'll have questions
that.
shortly.
Yeah, we'll probably be asking you some questions.
Pointed
So,
questions.
Very pointed questions. Where were you on the night of? All right, so anybody else? Anybody else? We've got a Craig. It's good. So then we'll move on to the consent agenda, typical 3 things. Unless someone would like to pull something for conversation. Tim, you were at the last meeting, so you're not going to be in the record for having voted on things that you weren't here for. So.
maybe I didn't vote on something I was here for.
You even gave a report.
I read those
I'm
last night
good.
too.
I'm good. I'm
Very
good.
good.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
All right, there's a motion. Is there a
Second.
second? Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Carries. So now we move on to the board appointments. So planning, here we go. So first of all, we're looking for someone for the park board, correct?
Still looking.
Still looking for someone for the park board. And the planning commission, we've got 2 people for 1 opening. We've got Phil Oswald, that's Phil. I don't know if you know Phil in the back there. And then we've got Mike up here, just introduced himself. Both candidates have declined being considered for the park board. Come on, guys.
It's so much easier.
So these are always the fun decisions where we have to look through 2 candidates and pick one. So you've had an opportunity to look at the applications. If you would like to ask either of the candidates any questions, are right here. Or we could just go ahead with a motion, or however we want to work ahead with this, because knowing Phil and knowing Mike, I think that both of them they will fulfill the duties of a planning commission member intelligently and well. So it's hard for me to put my hat in either direction. So
Yeah, I think once again, we have, 2 well-qualified candidates, interested individuals. It seems like filling the planning commission position vacancies is always a challenge, and now we have the challenge of deciding amongst 2 qualified candidates to serve too. So, before we even take any action, I'd like to thank both of you for putting an application in and being considered for the position, because it's not often that it's sometimes difficult for us to get individuals to step up to fill some of our committee and commission assignments.
I also like to point out that, let me get back to the microphone. I'd like to point out that I think it's awesome that when you say how have you been involved in the community, that Phil put down he's beginning to curl. That's good. That's a very important thing. So, does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask the candidates, or does anybody have a feeling about making a motion in either direction for either of the candidates?
I guess the only thing I'd ask maybe is and Phil, you didn't, if you want to, you could say pay too, like Mike did, just so you feel, if you want to say your bit. But I guess part of, I mean, this moves down our agenda a little bit for tonight, but with our setting council priorities for the next couple of years and some of those items that are on that, I think some of those things are going to fall onto the planning commission. In fact, the number one on the list is the city code update and enforcement. And then another one on there is also housing. And so some of the things that we've talked about is breaking out potentially like subcommittees within the planning commission to try and tackle different aspects of it, right? And there's like a committee that we were talking about putting together for housing, right, to look at what the city's solutions are or trying to come up with some things. So I guess my question is, I mean, the commitment is generally, I think I'm right, an hour, or one meeting a month, right?
Generally,
Generally.
that's the case.
Unless they're special.
yeah.
So I guess just making sure that, availability for some of those things that we're gonna throw at the planning commission to be able to take on, that you guys would have the time and the willingness to kind of go after some of that stuff. It's a good opportunity, I think, for both the city council and the planning commission to look at that, but it's, if you've ever read the city ordinances and some of the planning or zoning things, it's, time to update. So you guys are both good with,
It didn't seem overwhelming. Yeah, I'll have the time to do that.
yeah.
How long of a commitment is this appointment?
3 years.
3 year?
They could serve one additional term beyond that, so they can serve a maximum of 6 years if they're reappointed.
So,
Did either one of you want to bow out right now? Just kidding.
we just do the,
Come on now.
Well,
That's our job,
I don't,
yeah.
and I mean, again, I think it's great that both of you have stepped up to be able to participate, or willingness to do it is great. I mean, it's really more my knowing of people. I know Mike from him being in town and me being in town, but I know Phil, and I've had good conversations with him on, on at least some of the ideas I've had about, like housing issues and about the zoning and issues that they've dealt with. And so, I don't know. I'd put out a motion to appoint Phil. So, and it's obviously nothing against you, Mike, but
Well, I have a quick question as far as living within the
it's a
city.
motion. Well,
Oh,
there needs
thought
to
we
be-
had to have discussion. Sorry.
Well, we need a second first. So is there someone who would second Anton's motion for Phil? There you go. Dies for lack of a second. So then the other thing would be to have a motion for Mike then,
Well, not necessarily. I think,
Gonna have-
if,
or just have.
Kelly's-
Kelly has a
discussion.
question, wants more
All right.
input before that motion is done,
I-
then I think
I just
that
didn't
would be
know,
appropriate.
because it's hard to make a choice off of these two things, and thinking that you're both very equally capable, is there, like, how long have you lived within the city? Is there other things that we need to know that you've been part of, that you don't have listed here? I don't know how to go about choosing. It's kind of like drawing straws for me.
That's what we've always, like, this council has always kind of struggled with that part. Yeah, so that's a really good question. I mean, what is your guys's, what some of the qualifications that you'd bring to not just the planning commission in general, but also to the work that Anton laid out that we're going to be working on this next couple of years? So,
I can tell you, I have not lived here a long time. Physically been in town since June 1, but we've owned property here for 5 years. We built a home, our first sort of partial temporary home, 4 years ago now, and finished our main house this last summer. And so I am retired. I have a fair amount of time available. I have worked in administration in higher education, and I've done a lot of strategic planning and campaign planning and a lot of other sort of level of what I would consider that higher level of administration work. And that's think that answers the question.
Okay.
I've lived up here 14 years. There's 10 of them about. We lived in Hoagland. We built a home and lived there very happily. I've lived in the city for the last 2. I'm a renter. I teach at the school. I have interest in government as the president of the union. I was a negotiator on the campus. I ran the levy and bond campaign. I just have interest in diversifying my skills. There's been many times that I have worked with organizations and trying to establish a focus and long-term plan. I have skills in that. I have master's degrees in public relations and planning. I just thought this would be an interesting way to serve the town that I've been here for a long time, and I'm planning to continue raising my family here and live.
That didn't make it any easier.
Well, that's what
Thank
happens
you
when we have qualified people.
No, I like to have a choice where you can't pick a wrong choice.
Yes, that's
That
great.
feels very freeing to me, but some people I know struggle with that because. you're
Well, yeah, there's
missing
always
opportunity.
somebody that's disappointed when they leave, that,
Yeah.
they, through their,
Still park board
Application
position,
in the-
just saying.
but,
Well, there is exciting stuff happening on the park board here in the next few years, too.
Totally true.
Yeah, come on.
on the planning side of that.
Planning side of the park board.
Planning side of the park board too, so. Yeah, I mean, I think it's, having sat on the planning commission for, I don't know how many years, a good number of years, I've seen a lot of individuals kind of come and go, and I don't think there's any particular skills that people come in that are really favored, but, I think the one thing is kind of objectivity and be able to think through, what the long-term vision might be and how that might play itself out. It's one thing to be dealing with a variance request that's very specific to a property. It's another thing to start looking at restructuring the city code and the ordinances, related to zoning and subdivision and how that might impact, bigger issues like housing in general. And, from both of your backgrounds, it sounds to me like you both have the abilities and skills to take on that role. I would welcome either of you, and I'm going to make a motion to appoint Michael to the Planning Commission, and I'm not even sure quite why that would differentiate, but I think,
Okay, there's a
just
motion.
offset your motion and see where we go from there.
There's a motion. Is there a second for that?
What if there's no second on this?
Then there's no second. More discussion.
The indecisiveness.
I'll second.
Okay, motion and a second. Any further discussion? You seem like you have something that you're still kind of working on, or?
I was just thinking, what did the county do that one time? Was it you flipped a coin or what?
Well, but that was an election.
It was a
I know.
horrible process.
Yeah, that was
We already did that.
That was almost a coin flip.
You're both here now.
Craig, did you have something to say? You kind of started
No, I just.
speaking up for,
I just second it. I think we have 2 great candidates, but like they say, we have 2 positions, it'd be great,
yeah,
Well, we'll have one again next year.
Well,
that's true.
I don't know, that's just,
On the planning commission?
So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, welcome, Michael. Phil, stay tuned. We've got a planning commission opening next year, and
I'm not going anywhere.
that's what I like to hear.
And a park board vacancy that is just calling for somebody
with the
to.
park board?
The golf,
Yes, 2 positions on campus.
If you bring someone for the park board, that's going to give you huge bonus.
Now we're talking.
Thank you
No,
both for your
thanks.
interest. You're very,
Yeah, probably.
Thank you, yes.
Thanks,
very much.
guys.
both.
Really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Phil.
I'll be in touch.
Thanks,
All right,
Michael.
appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, so we're moving right along. We've got I like how you gave us 10 minutes for that discussion on this calendar. You knew that was going to take some time.
15.
Yeah. All right, so now we've got the fire department update. This was a big chunk of what was in your packet. And this is the draft standard operating procedures for the fire department. So if you will, does everybody know who these guys are? You got Aaron, Milky, and Vince. What?
Yeah, say hi to the camera, guys.
There they
And
are.
Silence, Fire Chief.
Aaron Melky, Assistant Chief.
Cool. So this big packet of information, which Kelly read last night,
I did.
contains standard operating procedures for our fire department. And my understanding of this, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that this is basically a step towards the continuing professionalization of our fire department. I mean, you guys know what you're doing. You've been doing it for a long time, doing it really well. And so this is basically a document that then summarizes how you do those things and formalizes those things into a policy. Is that correct?
Yep.
Cool. Is there?
The policy that we found was from the 50s probably, and it said basically don't die, I think was the gist of it.
That's a pretty good start.
We won't like it and you won't like it. Bad outcome, right?
Right.
And we've been working on this for quite a while, a number of years actually. It's kind of been just ruminating. We've been working on it. We've got time. We're finally getting it across the finish line here, hopefully. So, and we didn't like reinvent the wheel here. We gathered a lot of info from other similar sized departments, similar sized cities, and got some help from our fire rep from the fire marshal's office. They've been doing some of this work too for cities. So we kind of grabbed the stuff that pertains to us and tried to capture all the great work that's been done previous to us, because a lot of it was just passed along by osmosis or word of mouth. And we've had a lot of turnover, a lot of new members, so getting this stuff written down for people to see when they're coming on board, and those that are on board, is real valuable. Also just the liability thing too, to help limit the liability of the fire officers in the city, and God forbid something does happen, to make sure people get the benefits that they're entitled. So it's kind of a big project all rolled into one. A lot of benefits that we see having this document.
So is there anything in here in terms of the operating procedures that is changed from like current protocols? I mean, I know stuff is now written in document form, but are you doing most of this stuff now, or is this going to be a big change to the?
No, this is all stuff that we already we do. It's just having it in writing so that, like you said, we're not just trying to pull it out of our heads, going, oh yeah, you got to do this when this happens. So this is something that we can give our new hires and our current guys, and they can be kind of mandatory reading when you get hired, to know what's expected of you and know what you're supposed to be doing at certain times.
How many current do you have on staff?
18?
Team?
How many do you want?
More?
I ask you guys this every year just because I want to see, because we find these people for the park board and for all of these other commissions and things like that, but a lot of times the fire department is one of those that doesn't get a shout out very often, and so I always like to throw the shout out there and just be like, hey.
Do you have to live within the city limits?
No.
Or
You
just
have to
be able
within-
to answer the call?
You have to be within 10 minutes of the fire hall.
Okay.
And the county's been working on this through emergency management, and Paul McFarland, goes on the radio every month, and so they've been doing a whole recruiting thing, which has drummed up a few prospects across the county, and we have a few people that we're trying to push across the finish line, but it'd be nice to have more prospects.
I think we talk about this all the time, and
Yeah.
it's a nationwide issue. It's not just Cook County, and it's not just Minnesota. It's all throughout the whole country. Tomorrow night, actually, there's a speaker that's going to be in Lutzen that's talking about this recruitment and retention stuff that I'm going to go see. So.
And we're getting busier, so it would help to have more people. Our call volume was up almost double last year over what the average was, so.
Wow.
And we're on track this year we're on the same track, so.
Well, yeah.
You want to do a promotional video, just let me know. Thought about
Totally
sending
do that.
Patrick up to your last event, but then you said you didn't want gawkers, so.
We don't want anybody running over our expensive hoses.
So with his drones?
So if people are interested, then they need to see one of you?
And you either talk to one of us or go to, just come to City Hall and fill out an application, and then that'll get us in contact with them.
Cool.
And
So-
it's, I mean, the fire hall's always open if somebody wants to come up there on our meeting nights, or, you know, if you see one of the guys with the jackets, you can just ask us what it's all about. Even if you don't live in the city, I mean, we'll point you in the right direction.
Cool. So looking through the policy, there's a lot of, like, this is pretty extensive. Like, kudos to you guys for catching a lot of the nitty gritty that you really need to know about. I see sections on different types of training that needs to happen for the, are those things that you guys are all up to date on, or are these things being put in as like, these are best practices and these are things that we are aspiring to do and that we will start doing now, or are these things you pretty much already have in place?
We've been slowly moving towards this, but this document is going to make it a lot easier for us to implement it a little better and to track our training, and it gives a clear expectation of what we expect of our firefighters to maintain their training, so that we're up to snuff on what we're supposed to be doing.
And this kind of ties into like our ISO rating. That's another reason for this, because we, you know, number of years ago, we got the number lowered, and looking through this year's report, I think we can probably get it lowered at least one more number fairly easily. And one of the things that has kind of been lacking is the record keeping, and this kind of ties to that, to have these on file and then have everything in order that we can just give it to them and say, here's what we've been doing, our training requirements are met, we're doing this, that, and the other thing. So, you know, long term down the road, I'm hoping that within a couple of years we can lower that number again too, and this should help get there.
How often do you get that assessed?
Well, it's supposed to be every 5 years, but I think it was like 8 by the time they got back to us.
Okay.
How do you keep track of all your paperwork and different things? Is it on computer? I mean, do you have a computer up there that you guys can?
Yeah, we have a computer up there, and every time we have localized training or anything like that, the state, or not the state, the colleges all have records of when we have an instructor come, and then we try to just have paper files for when we do something in-house.
Do you have Microsoft on your computer? Microsoft Excel?
Well, this year we just signed up for a online training program with a fire company. This is one of the things they do, and we're going to give it a try for a year. And everything is kept in there. We set up training for the month. It keeps track of who goes, what you do. If people don't make the training at the hall that night, there's online stuff they can go on their own time, at their own pace. So if they miss it, they can make it up, and that will record it in there too. So then, you know, we can go in there at any time and look, see who's met the training requirements for the month or the year, and then have a printout too, which is a
Awesome.
huge step over what we got now.
Yeah,
Because
that
like you
sounds
said,
awesome.
we just got basically all the sign-up sheets from every month about who was there and what they did. So
Yeah, because I know your time's valuable too in trying to keep track of all that stuff. You're right, software is the best way to go. If not, sometimes Excel spreadsheets are another quick, easy way once something's set up. So
yeah.
making sure that we can give you what you need to do those things is
Does-
important.
Now, if this new training program works, it's pretty reasonable. It's about $50 a firefighter a year that it came out to be. So and that's, you know, there's training videos and
That's great.
all our required OSHA and right to know stuff's in there. So it should, I'm hoping it works, and we can just continue doing that, because it should make things easier for record keeping.
And I suppose that
the other
this,
thing that's nice with that too is the $50 is reimbursable through
Yeah.
that state
oh, that's awesome.
So it really didn't cost us
reimbursement fund,
anything.
so
So.
it's
Cool.
already money set aside for training.
Well, let us know how that goes. That sounds really awesome. Now, I'm assuming that this document doesn't say you're going to do the trainings in a certain way. It just says these are the trainings that we need to provide, and then this, you know, and then we'll make sure they're done by, you know, to a certain level at a certain time or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a handful of things that we all have to have every year, and then beyond that, it's just whatever we choose or think we need to do. So.
Cool. I have one last question, then if you guys have any other questions, you can go to. How often are you going to go over this? Is it going to be 2065 by the time you look at it again?
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not, no. We should probably look at that every 5 or 10 years, I would suppose.
Yeah.
Drag it out and just give it a once over and make sure that
Still
everything
works.
that's in there still is applicable.
Yeah, because trainings are probably going to change, and the equipment's probably going to change, and things like that, so.
And that may be something you want to add at the end of it too, as to how often it will be reviewed, because that pushes it on to whoever down the line as well.
Well, yeah, and, this one is labeled with draft on it. I believe
Right.
that it's labeled draft because we have the intention of approving this. And so we could approve it with this, with the caveat. Does anybody else have any other questions or any other comments to say about this?
I guess my only question is to Chris, just to ask, in the format that it's in, you've probably looked at other municipal fire agreements, operating guidelines, anything that we should be concerned about or,
Unfortunately, Chris is in Florida with his
Oh,
family.
he's not
so-
there.
This is Eric, everybody.
Oh, Eric, well, welcome.
But we did have Flaherty Hood review the document. They did make a lot of changes to it. So, and the two areas in particular where changes were made were suggesting that we remove anything that's redundant with other city personnel policies,
I see that.
and then taking out the things that look like job descriptions and salaries and such, and actually just having job descriptions and salaries and such in another place. So we have a conversation that's continuing where we're going to look through and make sure that everything that we took out is covered in our city personnel policies, and if it's not, then we'll come back around at that direction. Other than that, there wasn't any feedback from Chris's folks that there was other issues that needed to be addressed.
Deep breath, Eric.
And I don't think Eric got to be the one to review it. It was different.
Probably a different one.
It's one of the beauties of working with Chris's group is that they do have attorneys that are specialists, and they do have personnel specialists as well.
So with that said, about continuing conversations about making sure that all the information is in an accurate position, is that something that we should revisit this once those conversations are done, or is this?
Well, yeah, we'll be
substantive
bringing it
review?
back to you, and so we'll be bringing for sure back a couple of new job descriptions.
Mhm.
There is an existing job description now for firefighter, but we don't have one for the officer positions. And so now that this is a little more organized and that they really did a lot of work in writing down all the duties and expectations, we're right there for turning those into job descriptions. So we'll bring that back to you for sure. We'll also report back on if we think there is other policy work that needs to get done. But that'll be on us.
Do we need to motion on this tonight then?
If you don't have any issues on it, we're not planning on making any more changes to it. So I think, we're calling it draft, but it's final draft. It's ready to approve if you're ready to approve it.
I motion that we would approve this draft to be the final.
All right, there's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. Discussion. Do you want that to include a caveat?
It's in it.
For, the
Revisions to guidelines. Guidelines should have a complete review every 3 years and updated as needed.
3 years.
caveat? You guys are in now. Now you're playing.
It
the
also
game
talks that they can change it as
as
needed, so I'm good with that.
Great. There's motion. Any other discussion? Any other thoughts? I thank you for working on this for
Aaron
years.
did
Yeah.
98% of it.
Well, and contacting other, that's what it's about today is networking and finding people that can help. You don't have to invent the wheel, so.
We've gotten a lot of great help from Fire Marshal's office and Steve Flaherty and Jeff Mayer over at the college. Over the years, they've helped us come a long way from where we were 10 or 15 years ago. So we've had a lot of help.
That's great.
Nice work. Thank you for doing what you do.
Okay, motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of approving the draft of standard operating procedures for the Grand Marais Fire Department? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Fantastic.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
It wasn't related to this, but I thought since you guys are here, like, a question on, I noticed there's still a couple hydrants with tags on them that are inoperable. And we talked about it at one of our meetings, I don't know, whenever, it was
It was
a
probably
couple
one
years
of
ago.
our planning meetings or budget
Yeah.
meetings or something.
Do you guys have I mean, you guys have been in communication with Tom and stuff on that and trying to, or is it
I
bigger
haven't-
issues?
I haven't talked to him for a while about it, but
What
I
about?
have to imagine fixing them in the wintertime probably.
Right,
But,
but, I mean, well, I mean, yes, but I mean, there's been stuff, is it like, are you discovering new ones?
I don't know that they've been doing the testing this in the wintertime like this.
Yeah.
I did have a discussion with Tom last fall about setting up, trying to get us all in the same room and on the same page to start a flushing system and an annual kind of a check.
Yeah.
Because we just went out and did it, and I think we've discussed that, we went out and did it willy-nilly one night and kind of raised havoc for everybody.
Right.
So there's a process and a plan to it, it's just a matter of everyone sitting down and actually just doing it. I'd like to see that probably happen this spring, over breakup or something like that, so we can implement that with our, if we need to, with our meeting nights or training meetings, nights, so that if the city staff doesn't have the time to do it, I mean, as long as we know when and where, we can plan to go and do it ourselves. 'Cause
Have people been taking care of hydrants around their houses and stuff?
it seems to be, we didn't have a problem the other day. It was all cleared out.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So I haven't driven around town a bunch, but for the ones that I look at normally, they've been cleared out.
Cool.
Our staff's working on that too.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, all they do is
I
make
know.
snow these
Doesn't
days,
take much.
so.
So when you say inoperable, I'm just curious. Does that mean that like you can't actually turn them anymore, or I mean, because there's still water flowing to them?
There was a few that we couldn't actually open. When we went and did our checks, there was some that it was like, and you moved it a little bit and went, no, we're done.
That was bad.
So.
Because
so,
you don't
I
want
mean,
to break
that's-
it with.
Yeah, you
with
don't want to
water
break
going,
it and have
right.
flowing water.
We kind of do.
Oh,
Well, if you need it,
we
you're
need
gonna
it.
do it. Now we're testing.
But it'd be nice to get an actual schedule set
Yeah.
where we knew and if it got tagged, I mean, it gets fixed in a timely manner, so that.
Cool.
And that's a better time to find out those problems than when we need it, so.
Boy, yeah. Well,
I just hadn't heard much about that since we talked about it, so I just wondering where that was at.
Yeah, there was another discussion and then it turned into winter, so.
Sure.
it happens.
And
Winter
it's
is
still
coming.
winter.
So we may get to it in August, I suppose, the way this year's going.
Is your equipment holding up? Everything's working out all right for you guys?
Everything's working good. The only thing that we're kind of maybe still kind of got our feelers out there for is a support, kind of a rescue truck. That old support truck is seen its days. It was old when we got it, so.
You got a public utilities truck over here.
Also,
I think it's the same vintage. But
probably want to fix the door handle on it before you use it.
Yeah. Well, keep your ears open if you find something, let us know.
yeah, well,
Now
Aaron,
we got a request in through the DNR and the Federal Access Property Program, so
Sweet.
we'll see, that's out there, and hopefully they, at some point, find something for us here,
That's great.
because that's the most economical option. Basically, all we gotta pay for is shipping to get it from wherever it is, so
Nice that you have connections.
it helps.
yeah,
Very cool. Cool. Anything else from you guys?
I don't think so.
Anything else from you guys?
Thanks.
Thanks for all the
Thank
work you guys
you.
do.
Thanks for all the work.
All your work, yeah.
We'll see if we can scrounge up some more people for you.
All right. Thanks.
Based on our city website, Patrick?
You could do that. Put the application on there.
Yep.
Be a hero.
No, we don't need that.
No,
Be
different
professional.
kind of hero. Yeah, professional's better. All right, so next thing on the agenda, we have the council prioritization. So background for those watching. Council and the department heads met to do a strategic planning / prioritization exercise. That was just last week. And there are a couple of things that we did during that meeting. Number one, we took an inventory of each of the departments that the city had and what what the state of those departments were, the projects that they're working on, the projects they see upcoming, and then we weighed those against community vision and values that came from the comprehensive plan. Those, for the record, are support and enhance local business, encourage expansion of sustainable energy uses, develop access to housing that all people can afford throughout their lives, expand education for the mind, body, and soul, invest in safe, people-friendly infrastructure that supports active living, enhance the community's deep connection to the outdoors, and active engagement of the environment. So we brainstormed all these different potential priorities. Mike wrote down 37. I had 54.
Well, there was more than 37. When we were done grouping, there was 37.
Okay, that makes sense.
There's quite a few more.
Yeah. And we took a vote on those based on the values, and we ended up with the 6 priorities that are listed in the packet right now. Number 1 priority, and these are in the order that we voted on them. So number 1 had the most votes, number 6 had the least votes, and there were many that fell below this. That does not mean that we're not going to pursue those other items. It means that that our energy is going to be going towards the top 6, and then the rest of those will be worked on at the rate that we can afford to do so with our staff time. So the first one, not surprisingly, city code update and enforcement. So we're going to have to start talking about what that looks like and how we're going to work on that. Update city-county agreements was number 2, and that deals with county arrangements that we have for services, as well as law enforcement, road maintenance, and YMCA. Number 3 was the redevelopment of City Hall and the liquor store, and that's going to be an interesting one. That's a pretty large thing. But we've been talking about it for years. So that's reflected farther on in our agenda. 4 was Highway 61. That's continuing advocacy for the city getting what the city needs out of the Highway 61 project before, during construction, and making sure that the product is what we've worked with the community to design it to be. That's going to be a lot of working with MnDot, so that's good. We're going to put a lot of energy towards that. Housing, so city programs and regulations will be put under the spotlight in the next year or two to try and find ways that we can continue to encourage or at least remove barriers to housing of all types throughout the lifespan of people who want to live here. And then number 6, a capital improvement plan. So major projects that we have are 5th Avenue utilities when the county does 5th Avenue West, and then First Street reconstruction. So that is a verbal report, to put that in the public record, for the prioritization exercise that the council did. Does anyone have anything they'd like to add to that? Basically, this is just to bring the update out there.
Well, this is really what I'd like to see is, are the descriptions accurate in the way you understood it based on the conversations that were had, and is this something that you're willing to support by voting on it? So if it's not at that point, then it needs a little more work. But I think that the descriptions captured all the main points that were talked about that day, so I'm just looking for feedback on that, first off.
I think I did a pretty good job of summing up the conversations that we had. I think the combination of the 6 that it's narrowed down to, I think the finer points of them versus hit on some of those that lumping together that we did in some of those descriptions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I think it looks good.
Anyone else have anything to say?
Yeah, I guess I have a question on the first one, the city code update and enforcement, where it says it will conduct review of select city regulations. I mean, it seems like it leaves that kind of pretty open-ended to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Might be a little bit, might be a lot. And I sensed there was concern about some specific ordinance portions and city ordinance portions, or city code portions, but that we're not spelling out anything particular in here. That's, I just want to make sure that we're clear that we're not spelling that out. And if there's somebody that has a particular concern about portions of the city code that they believe need to be, on that list, like we've done for the capital improvements plan by identifying particular projects, should we be identifying?
I would suggest at this stage, no. Where we have things specified here, it's based on a lot of work that's gone on in the past to get them to that point. And this one in particular feels very new in terms of us process-wise. We haven't spent a lot of time going through a process trying to determine what is the problem we're trying to solve here and what are the regulations we want to look at. It could end up being a significant chunk of our regulations, or it could end up being 5 select issues that need to be addressed. And I think until we've had a chance to kind of dig into it, it's hard to say yet, which is why I purposely tried to leave it pretty open-ended at this point.
Yeah, the only reason I raised that is because I sensed that there were people that were talking about this issue that might have had some specific portions of the city code that they're interested in.
Well, I know that from feedback I've had from citizens, there are things that I hope we move forward and look at, but that probably is 3 or 4 things that people have brought forward to me. I think there's probably more in our books that need to be looked at, and how we go about reviewing those
The city code
and
is
updating.
that thick there with.
Yeah, but, and that's something that we have to work out as to where do we start?
Yeah.
What do we want to start with? But again, people have mentioned to me probably 3 or 4 different things that I would be in agreement with them on.
So how will we decide what portions of the city code that we really want to tackle? I mean, at some point, we're going to have to make that decision.
Yeah, that is the stage of this project that I think we're in, is asking that question. And I don't have an answer for it yet. I mean, this one really, we don't have a plan on how we're going to do this. So that's where I think, okay, this is our priority. Now what we need to do is develop that plan and start talking about, well, how are we going to decide? Which pieces are we going to look at? And what is is this based on the age of it, or is it based on specific circumstances, or is it based on some kind of mix of that, or is there just some topic areas we want to address? And I don't know yet. I think we're going to need to spend a lot more time in workshop setting to sort through that.
Would you feel better if there was specificity?
No, I'm fine the way it is. I just, like I said, I sensed that there were some individuals that had specific concerns about the city code that, this doesn't raise those at all. And,
Yeah.
as long as there's going to be a process to identify.
Yeah, and I would offer
what
that I
becomes
think
priority.
anybody here that has something specific they want to make sure gets addressed, and really anybody else that gets an opportunity to participate with us, because this question is broad enough that we want to involve the community in asking it, that there will be an opportunity for people to say, I want this to be dealt with.
So I have one other question too, and it's kind of just the opposite of that. It's the capital improvements plan where you specifically mentioned the Fifth Avenue utilities and the First Street reconstruction. There are things that I think may be left out of that I'm sure we're going to identify, but do they need to be put in if we're identifying others? Thinking about park improvements and conversations we've had and conversations that have happened at the park board about the future and reinvestment, and of course Highway 61 and what that means to capital improvements and the expenditures for city utilities and things that are going to happen with that project. And
The thought process I was using was to start with that general statement, we're going to continue to maintain a capital improvement plan because we have one. It includes big projects, but we also have a lot of more focused department level capital improvement planning going on, that some of it doesn't ever come to the council. It's not something that the council needs to approve or anything like that. The park board's capital improvement planning rarely gets to the council to look at because they're kind of charged with that function. So the opening statement is trying to reaffirm that that's a priority for us to continue those, even, the park board's capital plan versus, even the sewer plant's capital improvement plan, and all the things in between. I did bring up these because they're major undertakings, $1 million plus multi-million dollar undertakings that take years of planning to implement. And we know that they're on our planning horizon right now. As a matter of fact, we've already started doing design work on the Fifth Avenue utilities. So that's why I wanted to bring those two specifically. But you could also put Highway 61 on that list. It's just a little further down the road. It's kind of already in motion. You could put the automatic meter infrastructure. We don't have we could say there's an intention, but we don't have a multi-million-dollar project that's on the books in the near future up there. So it's more like there's a pump we know we're going to replace, and we're looking at some of the other older infrastructure and thinking about what's the right strategy for it. So it's not.
I thought Tom, maybe I just heard him wrong. I thought he mentioned there was the lifespan of that.
We did a study, and this was really brought on because our license every 5 years gets reviewed and renewed, and there was some new regulations with mercury that we were going to have frankly, we had a real difficult time swallowing. So we hired some assistants to help us figure that out, and part of it was the feasibility of the treatment options for mercury, but part of it was, let's just take a general look at this thing and give us some recommendations about it.
Sure.
So.
Okay.
In the capital improvement plan that we currently have, do we have things spelled out as to what year we would plan to do, to replace, to whatever it may be? Is there, when we say plan, is it more like a list of things that we want to get to, or do we have an actual plan that City Hall liquor store renewal would happen in 2021? Fifth Avenue utilities we would like to do in 2022.
Yeah,
we
we have
down
a schedule. Obviously, the schedule it's an intention, and it ends up being very flexible. By the time something gets on it, it's kind of a 5-year window. Like, we're not even trying to figure out which project we're doing 8 years from now. We also then identified our likely funding sources for these projects, too. So that's kind of the table we look at. Here's the project, here's the year we think we're going to do it, and here's the likely funding sources that are going to cover it. And it's not a long list. That level of capital improvement planning, we're really trying to just capture these significant cost projects. Then the Highway 61 is on it. The Public Works Garage is just off of it. The City Hall liquor store is on it. And we're in the midst of it right now, trying to figure out what's going to happen with that. First Avenue and Fifth Avenue are both on it.
First Street.
First Street.
Don't do
yeah.
First Avenue.
There's another block left.
Only if we're widening it.
So.
All right. Does that work for an explanation?
It does. And my point, I guess, in what I'm formerly used to, in what we had in our capital plan, department heads would come in and say, here's what they're looking at, and they would give us 3 years. Then we went to up to 5, and if it's something really big, it could even be further out. Not necessarily meaning that if you say in 2006 you're going to do Fifth Avenue utilities, by God, it's going to happen.
Right.
But that's kind of your goal. There may be other things that change it. There may be circumstances that move it up, push it back. But that you're reporting, in essence, to your board or your council what your plans are, so that we know what's out there as we start, thinking ahead and moving and looking to go, this is what we want, or that we say, this project's been listed for the last 8 years and we haven't touched it. Either it needs to go or it needs to happen. So that's kind of what I'm trying to get to with what our capital improvement plan is. And really, if you guys wouldn't mind either sending it out or having it at the next session for us to see, would probably be a good thing, especially since it's right here on our priorities now, to know what is on that list.
Well, it's number 6 on your priorities, so I'd be happy to send it out. That for this conversation, I think the important thing is we want to spend time on this, and that we don't have to do it today.
Right.
But we know that this is important. We want to keep doing it. We want to spend time on this, and there may even be some improvements that you want to see on it.
Yeah. And I read a lot of these, or all of these, as these are the intentions that we're going to be pursuing, and that we're going to be putting energy into these things. So if we adopt these as priorities via a motion, then that means that these are the 6 things that we're going to be putting a lot of our energy toward, and how we go ahead.
You are too.
But I mean, yeah.
I mean, this is an ambitious list, so
That's how we
make
roll.
no mistake about it. This is going to take a lot of your time and effort as well, and we're going to have to be pretty creative in how some of this stuff's going to get attention paid to it, and we'll certainly be looking at help where help is appropriate to work on some of these things. So, but it's a good list.
I've got a question on number 3. I know when we had that meeting last week, there was a lot of talk about the liquor store at City Hall. And I know it's in, we're going to probably be talking about it again here pretty quick, but you say explore private redevelopment of the City Hall liquor store site. Does that mean the liquor store may or may not be moved? Or it seemed to be kind of an important topic that it stays where it is, and that
It's been
kind of like I'm kind of not quite following what this request for proposal is, actually.
the past couple of conversations the council's had about the liquor store, City Hall, this site, the Tom Sabota site.
Correct.
The idea of seeing private development on this site was important. I don't think that it's implying either the liquor store is here or not here, so that it's the possibility exists that it might move.
Okay.
Chris has been pretty clear that he thinks it's right to keep it in the downtown. The council has not always agreed with that idea. So we're the step we're at now is more of a feasibility test. Is there even interest, and what does it look like to develop this site privately? And one of the things I think that we offer a private developer that makes this attractive is the potential of leasing space to the liquor store. That, you know, if they're going to do a significant development here, having that kind of an anchor tenant is very attractive. So I suspect most ideas, if we get them in response to our RFP, will look at the liquor store staying here, and potentially City Hall as well. And then it'll be up to us to decide, do we like these ideas or not? And then, you know, based on the results of that, we'll make some decisions about this site, we'll make some decisions about the liquor store, and we'll make some decisions about City Hall.
Well, I guess, yeah, tying on to what Craig said, and we can move off this because we're going to talk about it again
Yeah,
with the
I just,
RFP.
I know that.
But I'm just, I mean, that's my only, and I guess it's more of a question on even the word private in the redevelopment of the site. Like, you know, does that mean then, yes, the anchor tenant, I mean, obviously, just trying to figure out, and again, we can talk about that with the RFP stuff. So is City Hall gonna
City Hall gonna
lease a site?
rent? Are you gonna pay a lease? I mean, that's
Right.
kind of,
Can talk about it.
Okay.
that's what I thought when I read it. I just thought,
Yeah.
okay, that's kind of not what we talked about, but now we're talking about.
I think there's
Okay.
lots of ideas.
I'd make a motion to approve the list of council priorities.
All right, there's a motion. Is there a
As
second for
written.
that?
I will second.
Okay, motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Thanks for putting the time in on this, and it's very helpful for us as staff to get direction like this. Even though it's ambitious, it's good, it'll energize us, and we'll get working on it. And the next steps on this really is to just keep fleshing out each of these ideas until it looks a lot more like a strategic plan, where we start talking about who's going to do it, when are they going to do it, what's it going to take to do it.
Anything else? Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we have our list of priorities, so it's exciting. So moving right along, so this is something that will probably require some conversation. So the RFP, the draft RFP, it was included in your packet for the City Hall liquor store site. If you had a chance to read through the actual RFP document itself, I liked how in section number 2 we have a list of things that we expect, and those are things that are drawn almost directly from our comprehensive plan. So that's encouraging for me as well.
Well, they were drawn directly from your work session on this. If you summarized the things that you expected to see on this site, this is that list.
Second page, we have timeline and process, which is we're looking at March 29th for returning the proposals, and then throughout the course of April, having those being considered and thoroughly vetted. As far as the projects themselves, I like the project information section of 5 as well. Where this, not only are we asking people what is this going to look like, we're also asking them what's the market for what you're putting together. Is this something that is feasible to actually survive in the Grand Marais economy? How is it going to better the Grand Marais economy? And what rents are you going to be expecting? How are you going to pay for this prime downtown real estate when and if we get to that point? And I like the additional pieces of information that we're asking them for. So we're looking for the whole package instead of just a pretty building kind of thing. And of course, there's going to be a lot of conversation about what the participation of the city is going to be in that conversation as well. So does anybody have any questions about this RFP? Anything you'd like to see changed with it? Or any other discussion regarding it?
I had a question on the Part 2 proposal considerations under create an efficient and environmentally friendly design, where we say that it's to contribute to the community goal of carbon neutrality by 2040. Is that actually signed in, or is that still part of the plan that's coming up that we're going to look at?
That
in the
was
draft?
a council adopted goal.
Okay.
And that's the reason why we're doing the plan.
I couldn't remember if it's, with all that we talk about all these different times, I couldn't remember if it's something that was coming up when we were going to look at the proposals, or if that was part of it, so.
Yeah, it's
Well,
just a
that
resolution.
goal was adopted, and just to talk about that project for a little bit, obviously that's not on your list of 6, right? So that's one thing to think about. The other thing is, it's always struck me as a bit of an iterative process. You set a goal, it's ambitious, it's well into the future, and then the job of the plan is to describe what we think it's going to take to get there. And that's an opportunity to take a step back and say, okay, do we still like that goal? Now that you know what's it going to take to get there. So, although it's adopted, I think you will have another crack at it in the next couple of months after there's a draft plan to look at.
Any other thoughts?
I guess,
I hope there are. You guys want
Yeah.
to talk about some stuff.
Right.
well, I guess that's my question is, or one of my questions would be is, do we assume based on, all we have is we're talking about that work session from however long ago that was?
Yeah, a couple months ago.
Was I there? Was it at the
It was
higher
here.
ed?
Here.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, wait.
Was it higher?
Was that
Yeah,
higher
it was
ed?
at higher ed.
Okay, I
Sorry.
was at
My
that one.
fault.
Yeah.
Yes,
All
you
right.
were.
When you said here, I was like, nope, I don't remember that.
You were there.
But I guess that, and maybe that was the focus was, and maybe it's again because of the scope and the size and what the cost of it would be to do the build out. But I don't remember as much. Maybe that's always been the focus is the private development and trying, like you say, using this,
Yeah.
not to have the city build a new city hall and liquor store with space available so that for other tenants, Because
I mean,
what
turn
I,
around, the goal
yeah.
of
What I-
this is not to figure out City Hall, right? The goal of this is not to build a new liquor store. The goal of this is to reevaluate the usefulness of this site to contribute to the downtown economy.
Right.
And so, if that includes the liquor store and City Hall, great. But this was kind of, we need to figure out whether this wants to be something different first. And that's just what I'm hearing from you. So, I'm not telling you should do that.
I think it's a good opportunity to look at what ideas somebody else could have for this area. You know, at first when I came on the council, my thought was City Hall and the liquor store could be up at the Tom Taboga property. What a great parking place it would be. It still has visibility. I think that we would have a much bigger liquor store, which would allow for us to have more product, buy more product, which therefore brings your prices down. Then are we talking more people who live here are buying along with our visitors? I've kind of switched my thinking to the fact that it probably needs to be here. But like Mike said, I think that if a private developer were to look at this and purchase it, one, we've made money off of selling the land. Two, now we have a tax base that we're adding. And three, if your anchor tenant is the liquor store, that's a win as far as I'm thinking. There's, I haven't thought it all out yet, but whether or not City Hall is here, that could go up there where it doesn't have to be anchored here. I don't think the foot traffic through City Hall is nearly comparative to the liquor store.
Not at all.
And then we would have opportunities possibly to build something where do we then maybe lease space to other people who are looking for office areas. That's just in my head,
Yeah.
obviously. But I think that it's a nice opportunity. It's not locking us into anything, but I think we're exploring, and I think we owe that to all our citizens to explore what really is available.
Yeah, no, I
And
mean,
out
I
there.
understand I agree with all of that. I guess that's just my side of it is and maybe I just remember the conversation wrong, or there's just huge parts of it that I don't remember, but I didn't know, I thought that there was, it would be a look of it was basically redeveloping the site, and it wasn't necessarily that it was going to be private redevelopment, like that's the only route we're going. That's the only thing I'm saying about it.
And it's not the only route. It's
But this
the
is what
first
we're
route.
asking them for
Yeah.
this.
So
So
we'll
what
learn.
I question is, and who knows, maybe if the numbers come back, right, and or these ideas, and we get a half dozen or 3 or 2, whatever we end up getting, will, as the potential, how am I trying to say this?
We're the owner of the property right now.
Well, I know that, but, I mean, that talks about, one of the things in here is saying that, like, the city will be offered a fair price for the land, and, because of the, obviously, the area that it includes, and so, I don't know. I guess, yeah, that's all. If it's not, if we could take the information that we get from this, and we could say, like, hey, why would we hand this off to a developer to be able to do this when actually we can have office space for City Hall? We can have office space that we could rent to some of the different entities that are currently here, but we could have an additional community space. I see the benefits of both sides, right? I mean, obviously, private development, if the roof leaks, Lenny doesn't have to get up on the roof and fix it, right? I mean, because we're just we got a landlord that takes care of that. But I also, I don't know, I feel like one of the conversations we had is if there is storefront, like the idea of, like business incubator type things for businesses trying to get started here to be able to, which maybe that gets worked into this with a private development agreement, that like there would be some sort of like lease limit on what the space is, or maybe the market would just drive that anyways. I don't know. I mean, that's the only, maybe I'm just being way too hung up on the private side that is popping up in this, but
I wouldn't be.
okay. Well, if that's the case, then
It's not a limiting thing to focus on that right now.
Okay.
It's our only way to really determine whether that's real.
Right.
And even if we get a lot of proposals, we're going to evaluate them.
Right.
And we're going to decide, does this make sense? And we're going to compare it to whatever vision you have in your mind about what we could do on this site.
Sure.
And it's not a simple calculation to think about, well, we're already paying ourselves rent from the liquor store, right? And we're paying ourselves a lot of rent. Like, no one's going to pay property taxes to the city on, I don't care what they build here, that's going to replace what we're paying ourselves in rent right now. So it's already a loser there. But we don't have to build a new building, right? And so that's a huge cost side of things. So just getting all the numbers in a little more of a real state and looking at the concept in a little more finished state helps us then kind of go through that calculation and decide, is the benefit here worth doing? So we know we can build ourselves a new liquor store. We can do it here, we can do it up there, we know that. And if it's just about the liquor store, it's probably a better choice for us to just do it ourselves. But what we're trying to explore here is there some way we can leverage this opportunity to make this whole site something better than it is?
Well, and I thought that when we left the last conversation about, the liquor store, City Hall, and we were talking about this site, one of the reasons for putting together an RFP was to find out what kind of value this site had in terms of private development, because if it doesn't have any value to private developers, then
You've learned something very important.
then we know something.
Yeah.
Then we know something, and then it tells us, well, if we abandon this site, well, and nothing goes in here,
Right.
and it turns into a public parking lot,
Right.
well, there might be a value, but there's certainly not an economic return on that, where if we find out that there's certain value to the developer in developing the site, it becomes an asset to the community in terms of tax value and that kind of thing.
Sure.
I mean, the issue of the City Hall and the liquor store, I think, are the next part of the conversation, not part of
This.
the RFP necessarily.
We'll pivot. After we've learned what we're going to learn from this, our focus will become, what are we going to do with the liquor store? What are we going to do with City Hall? Because that's what's on your priority list. So this is just a strategy we've chosen. And it's really about what Tim was talking about. We can't, in my mind, decide to move the liquor store off of this site without having a viable alternative ready to go on this site.
Yeah.
Because that would be a real disservice to the downtown. So we're trying to explore now what the viable alternatives look like here.
So we will hold all of the final decision-making, power for whatever comes back from the RFP process. But in order to send out the RFP, we need to adopt it. So my question on this is there anything substantive with how this is written that you would like to see changed? Is there something that's missing in the information that you'd like to see? Where are we at with this?
Well, the one thing that strikes me about this is it seems to throw the liquor store and City Hall into the equation by the last part of it, which defines city participation. Frankly, I've all along have said, I think that the better location is up at Top Dakota, where you can have unlimited space and better access and better visibility. I'm not sure that this gets us to that. I mean, not that I'm saying that's what we're deciding to do, but this seems to say that we're focused on utilizing this site for the liquor store and City Hall, and not the potential that might not be even part of the equation.
Well, I think that that's up to the developer, honestly, because if you look at how it's written, describe the potential desire of the developer to include any of the existing uses as tenants.
Well, it's clear that a tenant, a developer is going to want a viable tenant like the liquor store. I mean, they're going to be able to pay rent from day one, and there's never going to be a question about whether they're going to move or relocate. I mean, that's like renting the post office.
So the choice you have then is to either do something like this, where we leave it somewhat open-ended, but it's clearly on the table, or we specify that it's not on the table, that we have no intention of being a part of the development, and that's clearly specified. That's the choice I see.
Well, I just think
and
that-
based on the conversations that we had, because I've been, working with potential developers, trying to figure out, what do we have to do here? What does this look like? What does interest look like? You're right. They're all going to be interested in this.
Of course they will.
So I think the
yeah.
idea that we're going to get any interest without putting it on the table is pretty small. And, what will that look like? There'll be other city participation required then.
I mean, it's going to take this whole proposal back if we say, well, maybe we don't want you to do the liquor store. What would that do to the development? I mean, I think it needs to be a scenario with city participation or a scenario without city participation, because that liquor store could go somewhere else too.
Well,
I think that's
my
fair.
opinion is, based on the conversations I've had with the developers that I've talked to, you're not going to get interest unless you put it on the table.
Well, there's no harm then in saying, what does it look like with city participation without? Because if it doesn't work without, then they'll just say, it doesn't work without, and here's what we have.
That tells us
going on.
something.
That tells us something. That's gathering
Okay.
really useful information.
Or is there another use that provides value to a developer? I mean, obviously it isn't going to provide the type of financial commitment that a city liquor store would provide. I mean,
We're asking for them to provide retail space.
yeah,
And frankly, I don't think the market for retail space is dynamite in our downtown area.
I would agree.
So that, this is a lot of space, and that we want them to just out of whole cloth create that, it seems unrealistic to me, that they're going to be able to bring something here or find something here that fills that space without us also offering this.
When we're talking about this space, we're not just talking about the buildings, are we? Are we talking about, does it include the parking lot?
Yeah.
So
The
basically,
whole
they
shebang.
have, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
That's what I was
Yeah.
wondering about. I think parking, basically, you're not specifying anything.
About parking?
No, about anything. You're not
No,
asking
no.
them, this is what,
We envision.
you're throwing it out.
We're telling
see
them
what
the
you get
values.
coming back.
Yeah.
We can decide what we like or don't like. We still have to have City Hall, we still have to have the municipal liquor store, either here, there, somewhere else
Yes.
downtown.
Yep.
Yeah.
But another key important thing that you don't have to specify or not, but, this does currently provide some parking downtown, and there's very little of that, so it'd be kind of, looking forward, probably not a good thing to develop, because we know where we can build. I mean, there's certain businesses that require parking, certain businesses that don't require parking.
Mhm.
And if we get wrapped up into building more and more and more and not providing parking and losing parking, I don't think that's a positive thing, to be losing parking.
Yeah. But the zoning ordinance does require parking for certain types of uses, so.
But not for very many. Hotels, doesn't
Resident,
require parking for restaurants.
residential, so, I mean, there could be more
Well-
parking on the site than
Well, yeah.
currently.
Well, it requires for like townhouses and condos and motels it does, but for restaurants, there's
restaurants
no
and
required
and
parking
retail-
ordinance.
retail it doesn't,
Retail, there's
yeah.
no required parking ordinance. You
So
know.
is that something that you'd like to see?
No, I don't think we need to put it in there. I just think, keep in mind, when you look at these requests for
Oh, yeah,
proposals,
absolutely.
I'm not
How is
gonna
this
rush
gonna-
to give up parking.
How
Well,
is this
as a
gonna
matter of fact,
impact?
Seriously.
you've said not that it's not just that it's missing. You said we want something different. You want to enhance the neighborhood vitality. I mean, a parking lot doesn't enhance
Doesn't,
vitality.
no.
No,
So you're
No.
asking for activity and things that would generate parking demand, not provide parking.
well, if we generate parking demand, we need to realize where are we gonna park those cars when we take away parking.
It'd
Because
definitely
you're
be
not gonna
something to
create
think
it
about.
somewhere around here, because there just isn't any more space to take it, to create it,
It's an interesting thought exercise too, though,
Yeah.
to look at the property and think, you're a private developer, how much of this, you've got a lot of space here, how much of it would you just make into a parking lot for your own purposes, just based on your own evaluation of the market?
Right.
And I'm curious to see how that turns out.
That's
Well,
part of
and
the
we still
development
haven't
system.
solved the parking dilemma across the street, and I will bring that up again tomorrow night, because I don't think that has changed, as I requested at the last joint meeting, so I will follow up with that tomorrow night as well.
Cool. So, great conversation. I wrote down a couple of the concerns that people have brought up in regards to the RFP. So, circling all the way back around, are we comfortable with sending this RFP out? Because if we are, then we should have a motion to send it out. If we aren't comfortable sending it out, then we need to find some kind of an alternative plan. I think that we've made a pretty good case, or a pretty good case has been made to find this information.
So you didn't make, you said you just took notes, you didn't make any alterations to language, right, Jay?
No, I didn't make any alteration,
I'd make a
but this
motion
is,
to approve the RFP as written.
okay.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. Any further closing comments?
Yeah, I like what we've done here. I think this provides us the next step in the process, and I like the fact that the timeline on this process is relatively quick. We're not going to have this hanging out there for 6 months, that, we're going to make a decision on this, get this information back, make a decision, and move on, or not move on, whatever.
Or at least be
comes out of it.
informed about what the conversation.
Well, we'll have the
How this
information
informs.
to decide what we're going to do with any developers' proposals. And that schedule is by the end of April, so I like the fact that we're going to get this thing moving along. so.
Yep, that's great.
Well, and I like that it's a blank slate, in essence. I'm hoping that we have some good options to take a look at. Maybe we get 2, maybe we get none, maybe we get 8, I don't know, but
don't know.
I'd be excited to see what
Yeah.
other people's ideas are, because I know that this is not my area of expertise, so.
Well, I think the sooner we do this, right now, the economy is still seemingly moving along. If we get into a recession, obviously, that's not a time when you look at these kind of proposals and get any kind of results out of them. So, when I think now is the time to get this thing done and make a decision and move on to whatever it is that we decide is appropriate.
All right. So there's a motion. Did we vote on that already?
No.
Motion and a
No,
second.
there's
Yep.
a motion and a second.
Motion and a second.
Motion and a second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. So you'll get that sent out.
Yep.
And that's great. So next thing, so we got lots of stuff that's kind of interesting legal type stuff. The right-of-way offers from MnDot. So there are 3 of them that MnDot would like from us for drainage easements. 2 of them are drainage easements, and one of them is use of land in front of the library.
They all include temporary construction easements.
There's purchases too, though, right?
Yeah, one, the rec park property, they're purchasing outright what is owned that's already underneath the existing right-of-way. I don't know why they're bothering with that. They already have full control over it. We can't do anything on it, but they want to pay us for it. Okay. And then there are a couple of permanent drainage easements where there are already existing culverts in the pond west of 8th Avenue, and then in the community connection area. And then also where the big culvert comes across the highway, down the hill.
Yep. So we have drawings in our packet of the properties that are in question. We're looking at the amounts of
No,
1,000.
this is
Oh goodness, what did I do?
Well,
Too many
let's
pieces of
go
paper.
from one at a time.
That sounds like a great idea.
All right, great.
This is,
So we'll start with the first. The first one is the drainage
Oh,
easement
Got it.
right here.
Up on this side of town.
that's the big
So which
culvert
map?
down to
This is the one that's
the park, yeah.
That's where I.
this is where the community connection is. I believe.
No.
$1,175, the first one that's on your list.
Yep.
This is the culvert that crosses the highway as it comes down the hill into town. So with the retaining walls, and it's the really deep culvert that crosses on the way into town.
Trailside.
By Trailside.
Yep.
The, or maybe it's just right down the hill from that. You can see on the map that It's across the street from those two houses that were built next to Lund's Cabins. And it's an existing culvert, there's an existing drainage easement on it, and they're just taking a little bit more permanent drainage easement, and they're gonna pay us the 1,000, I've already forgotten.
1,000.
They aren't doing anything with that big culvert at all, though. They're not redoing it, because that was
No.
done when they did.
They're not planning
redid
on
the
doing any
highway.
work on it.
They just want to own it. Like, they just want to own the.
Yeah, so just to cover the issue of drainage easements altogether, because the question I asked Michael then is, well, what, are you intending to maintain these? What's the idea here? Why do you need an easement for something I'm pretty sure you're gonna tell me I have to maintain? And they just do want one, because they own these things, they're already there, and if they had to come and replace that pipe, which, you know, apparently they wouldn't ask us to do, then they need an easement to be able to do that sort of thing. So, I'm still a little confused, I'll admit, but it's really not anything where
So
it
do they-
affects the way we're gonna use the property,
Ma-
and
They maintain that area then?
they don't do
No.
any maintenance on it.
Okay.
This isn't land purchase, this is easement.
It's a permanent easement. So, you know, it gets to that question of what does own mean, because it might not be a land purchase, but it might as well be.
Those are the three.
And are they gonna do work in that area to make improvements to that channel as it exits the culvert? Or-
I'm not sure.
Boy.
I don't believe so, but, well, I'll take a
not
look
on
at the 90% plans and see.
I mean, I wasn't aware that they were doing anything up in that area, so I'm surprised that they.
I don't believe they
wanted
are,
an
and-
easement for something that they're not even gonna be dealing with.
I mean, this is the sort of thing where they're going through and they're doing such a elaborate process of looking at the right-of-way that I think they're just trying to clean up a lot of issues that they perceive today. And this is their chance, their one chance to do it. So I don't believe there's any work involved with this.
I've not heard that, ever heard that there was ever gonna be any work at all outside of the the roadway.
No,
Well,
they
this
are
is-
replacing some of those culverts. I don't know whether
This is
this one
temporary.
is.
This one was redone when they
Easement
rebuilt the
shall cease
road,
December 2020.
you know? 22. When they did that, what, 15 years ago or whatever it was.
So
Yeah.
this is temporary.
Which parcel is that, 251?
Yeah.
Yeah,
one
this
we're
is the
talking
one
about.
that's for 1,100. And again, it's just not,
Yeah.
that, you know, it's not worth even spending a lot of time of worrying about it, because they're gonna take it anyway, and the price isn't worth figuring out, and it's not gonna affect our usage of the property, and they're not asking us to do anything specific with it. So
So my only question would be is, are they doing something there? You know,
yeah, I'll take a look at
I
the,
just have not been aware that
they've just released a 90% plan, so I'll take a look.
Want to acquire a permanent easement in an area.
It's
that-
not permanent.
This one's temporary.
It's temporary.
That's what I thought.
That's where we were, we
where I
were
was-
talking wrong. We said permanent,
I
it's
was
not.
looking at.
Temporary easement for highway purposes.
Parcel 2.
Said easement shall cease December 1, 2022, or on such earlier date upon which the Commissioner of Transportation determines.
So if you take a look at the plan sheet blow up, where you can see the details clearly,
Oh, I see.
there's an existing
This black area is
permanent drainage
temporary
easement
Yeah, okay.
that
I
they
see
already
now.
acquired from us in 2003 when they did the project.
Mm-hmm.
And then the temporary easement is what they're gonna pay us for.
Okay, I was confused. I saw this thing down here, it said permanent easement. I thought it was pointing to this when it's actually pointing to that thing way up there.
So do we need to motion each one individually then?
If you think you're gonna make a different decision about any of them, yeah.
Well, I just want to look at them one by one, so I would motion to approve the temporary easement for parcel 251 CS 1602.
Okay, there's a motion for that one.
I'll
So that is-
I'll second that.
Motion
too,
and a
so-
second, so that's this one.
Yep.
Okay. Any discussion on that?
Would you mind including in your motion that you authorize me to sign these things too?
Oh, yes, I would authorize Mike Roth to sign on behalf of the city.
Well, I probably need to sign it too, but whatever. I don't know how MnDOT works.
No,
Is
every
there a
time we
city
do
attorney
something, it's
review
the mayor and the city administrator. What's that?
The city attorney review these documents? Does he need to? I mean, I'm just asking.
Well, I'm not sure, Eric, if you or Chris have actually looked at any of these. Usually when the state sends contract documents to us, there's not a lot of point in us commenting on them.
Yeah, I briefly went over what the state provided, and I mean, they look fine. There's not, even if we suggest a change, it's probably not going to be accepted by the state. So, I mean, what they put in will work.
Okay.
Because it has to.
Yeah. Well, and this one's temporary, so
Right.
we get cash.
All right, so there's a motion for that parcel. Any further discussion?
And a second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Okay, so let's look at these other ones.
Parcel 40. That's next.
Parcel 40, so this is 104 West, or 2nd Avenue West.
It's the,
It's the chunk in front of the library.
you can see the price for this is $18,900. This is a temporary construction easement.
This one is a purchase,
No.
Nope, temporary.
Temporary.
with the property interest being property interest.
Yes, they're purchasing a temporary construction easement that you can see on the beautiful color map. The dark green area is what they're proposing to acquire the easement over. That, we've reviewed the plans for what's going to happen here, and so this one seems pretty easy to me.
So it goes in front of the library, does it also run in front of the, I don't know what they call it anymore, but the Coldwell Banker
Yep,
building?
it goes all the way to the corner of
To the
that.
sidewalk.
So
Okay.
will that disturb the rose garden at all, or?
Now, Michael's promised Frankie multiple times
I've heard
that the
that,
answer
yeah.
to that is no.
Is that why
But
it drops down to
technically,
5 feet
part of the
wide?
rose garden is already in there right away, and they can do what they want with it. And part of it is in this easement that you're giving them permission to do what they want with it. So we're relying on, and I'm sure Michael means it when he says
Yeah.
it, that they're not intending to do anything to disturb the rose garden.
Have to sandbag that thing or something. You could,
Well, if they
We
want
could-
to cross
I don't
Frankie,
think that's
that's
gonna
their.
yeah, I don't think they want to mess with the rose garden.
So this easement is roughly 12 feet wide from the upper side of the sidewalk into the library lawn.
Well, from the right-of-way line, and you can see that's just past the sidewalk,
Yeah. Yeah, and then it jogs over around the rock wall.
So when
Did they
they're,
give you a price per square foot on this?
They did. If you want to come look at
Square
the
feet.
appraisal, you sure can.
All right.
I don't remember it off the top of my head.
30,184 square feet is what they're looking for.
So less than 50 cents a square.
That's not right.
That can't be that much.
That's not right.
That's
No.
2 million square feet.
Entire tract without road.
30,000 square feet might be
Oh,
what the
temporary
whole
easement.
parcel is.
Temporary easement, 4,264. That's way better.
Yeah, 30's a lot.
Yeah, sorry.
so do
That was the
they,
first number I saw.
with these, when they're done with construction, do they return it, like if they're tearing up grass and all that, do they resod and do those things?
That's my understanding, is that they return to the,
Yeah, that'll actually be part of their contract with who's going to do the work. That there's a standard to bring it back to.
Okay.
And in the language in here, they have an obligation to do that too.
Okay.
So, and then that obviously, where it bumps out there by number 33, that number 33 in the left corner, that probably, is that stopping before the sign? Or are those squares representing the,
I don't believe that the walls are inside of this construction easement,
yeah, okay.
so
Just, yeah, that's all, I just want to make sure.
this is one of those places where the work that MnDOT was going to do versus the work that they were going to have us do outside of their project, and I wasn't really sure how that plays out yet.
I'll make a motion to approve the temporary easement and payment thereof on parcel 40, City of Grand Marais.
all right, there's a motion, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Motion and a second, any further discussion? I know it's probably just a silly thing, but I'd like us to include a note with this one when we sign it that says, remember the rose garden, or, you know, like, it's our understanding that the rose garden won't be disturbed. Just to remind them, just to throw it in there. I don't know if that's appropriate or not, but
Contractor.
Can't hurt.
I think,
Contractor's not gonna get that note, but
well,
I think
somebody hopefully will get
if
it.
there's been talk about it, I think it should be written in somewhere, written down somewhere.
In the plans is where it ought to be.
That's,
Yeah.
Do not
that's exactly, yeah, right.
Would you like me to
That
amend
makes
my,
sense.
We'll just, everybody's shaking their heads, I think we'll just make that happen.
I know a guy that'll be dealing with the sidewalks, so I'll talk to him.
Good, good.
I know who.
Everybody needs to talk to everybody
I know
about these
who.
things.
Who may be coming up, I believe, to supervise that curb and gutter and sidewalks.
That'll be fun.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. All right, so the last one is a permanent drainage easement right to the west of 8th Avenue West. And this is in that drainage pond that that was installed a number of years ago. And this is another one of those ones that I sat and looked at this and wondered what? Like, why do they want this? But they want it because
They want it because there's existing culverts that are already there that come off the highway's drainage system. And they don't have drainage easements for them, so they would like to acquire them. And then they have temporary construction easements, you can see kind of surrounding that. Now this one's tricky, the 8th Avenue, west of 8th Avenue one, because in our stormwater management plan, we talk about potentially wanting to do something different on this site. And now, if we're gonna grant a permanent drainage easement to MnDot, they have an opportunity to tell us, no, we can't. Whereas, if we don't have a permanent drainage easement with MnDOT, maybe there's more of an open conversation about what happens there. And we've certainly had great open conversations with them these past few years when this project's been going on, but pretty much every other conversation we had with them before this project, and even the first year and a half of this project, was less open.
so do
And
we,
it was, so I have some concern about that.
so do we have, I had a project years ago that there was no, it was a highway, it was on 61, and there was no culverts added in the road except for right onto the property I was working on. And so it took all of the water from the north side of the highway for like a half mile. And the one spot they sent it under was basically just down into this person's property. So what went from like really next to nothing to like, obviously, some rain events. So has this been done like through our stormwater system that we have, that we, right, the analyzer, or what's it called? That we
Yeah.
pay for?
Yep.
So that, as it sits right now, like, that will test out and it's fine?
No. First of all, they're not proposing to change how the drainage works coming to this site. So these easements aren't suggesting that they're going to do something different drainage-wise. But in our stormwater management plan, we identified this area as something that we want to do differently.
And you're saying that by giving them this, then we have might have a harder time managing it?
Well, we've just granted someone the opportunity to say no, because it's their easement that's permanent for drainage purposes.
But that water doesn't stop at the end of their.
No.
Okay.
Sure
we
doesn't.
can do anything around it.
You're
It's
saying
just-
permanent, but then here it talks about temporary.
There's three different
The
ones.
green,
on
the
this.
green is the
Oh,
temporary,
okay.
the yellow is permanent.
Permanent.
There's also the community connection is a permanent easement.
Okay.
Yep. So yeah, the blow up you can see goes all the way to the community connection with the light green and the yellow. And there's a whole nother piece of this that is not shaded on the map, but it's already in the right of way that we have title to, that they want to purchase from us. And I don't really know the purpose of that, but if they want to give us money to say they own what we can't do anything on, okay.
That's that 5-foot green temporary easement along the south. what am I-
There's
It goes
a
here.
portion of our, it's easier to see on the big map.
He's looking at this.
Oh, yeah.
The big map,
that's
a-
there's a
it's a
yellow
strip.
shaded, or where everything is small, I should say.
Yep.
There's a yellow shaded section at the top that's actually above the green
then
easement.
that goes
And
right
when you look at our legal descriptions, some properties are like this. The legal description
We don't-
extends into the highway right of way.
Right, because we own fee title to the,
And they want to come in and purchase that from us. And it just seems kind of silly to me, but, okay.
well, let them buy it from us.
Yeah.
We're not gonna, we'll never get another nickel out of it for anything else.
No,
You know.
no, and we don't have the right to do anything on it, so, great. We'll clean
So
that up.
why do they have the yellow on the rec park portion of it?
Yeah.
What's that,
Why
that
is
whole
there so much
light
yellow?
yellow?
That's the parcel itself.
Yeah,
Like
That's the-
they just identified the entire parcel with yellow.
yep, that's the parcel itself.
Just like with the other parcel, which of course now I've moved.
They just changed the color.
So they're not asking for construction.
You can't see it, I don't know, maybe I'm
No,
colorblind,
just
but can I see the
this.
difference
The
between
green
the
is the
construction?
construction.
The
The
yellow.
yellow, this
So many
up here?
pieces of
that
No,
paper.
it's-
So when you get to below it, you
This
can see the
thing.
construction
That's what I'm
easement.
saying, that hash
It's
yellow,
mostly a
Well-
5
Oh,
foot.
that portion of it, that,
right above the green line.
I
This
would
part
motion,
here.
since we
Yeah.
need, I would motion that we table parcel 2 at this time until we have more information
This is permanent.
and clarity,
Permanent drainage.
because this would be permanent.
That's why I'm reading that.
Okay, so that's a motion.
Green is the temporary.
So we've got a motion to table, so,
I'll second that so we can continue our discussion.
okay, motion and a second, we're gonna
And-
continue discussion.
The concern, is obviously
That
on
must be
those
permanent.
8th Avenue West ones is that there might be some issue that we aren't aware of,
That's
that
where
we
it
should
goes down into
make sure we're clear on before we grant this.
But we're not.
Is that what you're thinking?
We're not going to get clarity on it before the deadline for having to approve this or
What is
it
the
moving
deadline?
to. Well, it's going to be coming up. It's
This is
there's
30
a 30-day
days.
waiting
30
period.
days after the last,
So if we deny
Business
this
gets their
one, what
packet.
happens?
Everybody have
The
their-
condemnation, they'll take it anyway, and we'll go through a lengthy process to fight about what the price is. So, the conversation, we can go back and talk to MnDOT about our intentions to potentially do a stormwater management project on the site in the future and see if that affects their viewpoint about what they need or doesn't. I'm not sure where that would go.
I mean, is it, the way these are drawn up, it makes it very hard for us to give any kind of counter offer of any sort. Like, they're not built to have counter offers. Because all that I would ask, like, I think we could solve this pretty easily if we could counter offer, yeah, go ahead and buy it to us, but whenever we want to do stormwater stuff, you got to work with us.
They are open to counter offers, and I think probably a lot of these offers are going to be countered. The only thing they want to talk about is money. They're not interested in talking about what piece of property they're acquiring because it's based on the designs.
Well,
that
it's
they've-
fine,
So
they
if
can
they-
pay us to acquire the property, just got to be willing to work with us when we
Yeah,
have
and so
other-
then I don't know whether that's on the table or not. We'll have to ask.
So are
Is
they
that-
planning to do work in this area then
yeah.
if they
Where
get
it goes into
permanent?
the North House area, that's gonna be new,
I don't
What
believe
is
so.
that?
There's an existing.
that's existing.
Yeah.
That's the
They want
existing
permanent
pipe.
drainage then for that.
There's already a pipe there.
The pipe-
Maybe that will be replaced
I
actually,
don't
since
know.
all that's going to get torn up and there'll be new curb and gutter on that piece of the road.
Well, there's gonna be new curb and gutter, because it's getting tore out.
Yeah.
It's getting narrowed.
But I
don't
think
know
the
what's
design
underneath.
showed the existing catch basin structure staying
Is that
and the
city's
new ones being
responsibility?
built.
That pipe, is that city's responsibility, that pipe?
That, it's a tough question to
Because it's
answer.
coming down from,
And you get an easement like this that says MnDOT has a permanent drainage easement. I don't think we've got an agreement with them that says it is, but I suspect that they will be telling us that it's going to be.
It's our pipe on their easement?
It's their pipe on their easement that we're responsible to maintain, is what they're, I expect
our
their
pipe.
position.
it's our pipe, because look at it, it doesn't go yellow all the way,
Yeah.
it's coming down from,
Yeah, and that's about where it discharges into
Down the old brown
into those ponds.
right,
Those
that's
little-
wooded, that's where that water's coming from.
you know,
Right.
Rain garden ponds.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right, right,
that's where it's coming from.
that's where it's coming from.
I'm more concerned about what happens at the bottom of 8th Avenue. And if we have storm of storms and the drainage and what goes on
Well,
there.
we've had bad
In
storms.
Union Lake.
There's already lines there.
That
There's already-
pond isn't, the issue
That's what-
isn't that it's inadequate for flooding.
I guess.
The channel after it
After it.
can be bad,
The
and,
dangerous part.
through the campsites, we do a lot of work on that to maintain it
The road,
and to
yeah.
improve it. The issue at 8th Avenue is that it's really not set up to do adequate treatment or even retention, and that we want to re-engineer it so that it works better. So one would hope that MnDOT would be okay with that, but considering it's on our property.
Is there more when they tear up the highway by the tourist park all the way to the north house on the lower side of the highway and put a new sidewalk in and the bike path? Is there going to be storm sewer going in there too?
Mhm.
So you have storm sewer on both sides of the highway?
There's already storm sewer there.
On the lower side there is? There is on the upper side.
There's storm sewer on the lower
Storm
side.
sewer on the lower side already?
Mhm.
Where's that draining into?
The-
That one right, that goes right in.
Well,
but the
the
east
point
side
I'm
is-
making, are any part of this construction going to be collecting more or rerouting our current water flow for storm sewer?
Rerouting, yes, not on these parcels.
Okay.
And it'll be collecting less because there's less pavement. So it's going to be an improvement, particularly for that pipe that goes towards the community connection site. The 8th Avenue won't be affected one way or the other because they're not making any changes to the area that's draining into it.
You can see on the drawing where the catch basins are on the lower side.
Oh, by that north house?
Yeah. Well, above North House, up the hill. There's catch basins as you go down the hill, it puts it in the pipe rather than running down the street.
Yeah, so they'll have intersection
Yeah.
catch basins on the north side, and they have catch basins running along the south side as well.
So right now, we have a motion and a second on the table to table this discussion. Is that still your intention?
It won't hurt to take another 2 weeks on this, and I'll learn what I can, talk to Michael about it, get back to you, and we'll put it on the agenda next meeting.
But this,
What, I think what would be helpful is to clarify the expectation of MnDOT and the city with regard to those stormwater outlets and how that, how they perceive that being managed in the future. Be helpful to just know that.
Well, I mean, our recent experience with these types of conversations is exactly what I've explained it.
Right.
They own the pipe, we're required to maintain it, we're required to do all the work that, whatever comes out of it, clean it.
But then the question gets to be is if there needs to be some modification to that and there's a permanent easement, what kind of arrangements are there to have us work within that permanent easement to,
Exactly.
are we buying it back from them to do the work that we are already responsible to do, or?
Yeah, I mean, we own the property, right? And if we're using it for drainage purposes too, I don't know how that would be against what they're doing.
they're doing,
But it's just, let's take a little more time with it.
Well, I mean, I think we should have that conversation. I think it'd be valuable.
all right. So we have a motion and a second to table this until we gather more information from MnDOT. Is any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so we will have this one particularly on our next agenda.
The last one.
The last one, parcel 2.
Yep.
And,
We'll get the
and
other
we'll
one signed
have
and
some-
sent tomorrow.
Yep, and we'll have some additional information ready for you.
We hope.
I hope. I
Well,
certainly
we'll have
hope.
some additional information ready for you, whether it is everything we were hoping for or not.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, so so the next and the last thing on the agenda for action is the ordinance 2019-1. So this is the Creechville rezoning that's on the east side of 5th Avenue West.
This is a second reading, and
Second
I'll
reading.
make motion to approve ordinance 2019-01.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
I will second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion on this? I talked to a couple of the people who own property up there, and they're very pleased that we're doing this. It's relieving to them. So, anything else? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Fantastic. So we'll move on to council and staff reports. So, Craig, you're up first.
Don't have one.
Nothing? Okay, good.
Last meeting we did. I did. Park board doesn't make it.
Okay.
Same for me.
Nothing.
Wow.
Tim.
I had a YMCA finance meeting
Okay.
on the 18th. basically, we look at where things are at. It was January financials that we looked at. Couple things are a little bit behind, mostly to do with daycare things, and that's ebb and flow. Other things that we did was talk about the upcoming year and how they do their fundraising. And when I say fundraising, what they do is this year they have set a goal for $40,000 that they work through, that they try to fundraise and use that for scholarships. So if there's kids who want to go to camp and can't afford to, that money's available. If there's people that want to participate in dance or gymnastics or whatever, those monies are available to be used. One of the things that I did suggest is they were trying to brainstorm a couple things. I suggested like a fishing tournament, which has to do with outdoors. I also suggested a golf scramble. And I did talk with Dave Turstig just a little bit about it to notify him, since we don't have a superintendent yet, because it would be a one-day deal. It would be a fundraiser for the YMCA, but it also would give exposure to the golf course for families and maybe people that don't necessarily use it, which is something that I think we desire. So I may be coming back asking for some things down the road regarding that. And that's what I have on that. Tomorrow night, has anybody received an agenda yet for tomorrow night's joint meeting?
Usually we put it together when we get there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I hadn't received anything, so I was like,
I thought it was during the day. I don't know.
It's on
okay.
at the school.
It's on.
At the school, in the ACA, right?
Yeah,
In
the room they've been using for their board.
Conference room. Conference room. You'll,
Oh.
you'll find us. We'll be loud.
Well, I'll be there at the same time as you. I'm not coming late. So, okay, that's all I have.
Okay. The only thing that I have is, so yesterday was the 26th. It was a day that I had made a proclamation to have it be Norman Deschamps Day. It was Norman's 66th birthday. And I was so incredibly pleased as well to see Governor Walz. He declared yesterday Norman Deschamps Day in the state of Minnesota. So a big...
One up to you.
I don't care.
I started it.
Yeah.
I thought that was really touching. It was really great. And the things that Governor Walz had to say, because he knew Norman, from all the things that Norman had done at the state level. He knew him and had some really nice things to say about him when he made a proclamation. And his proclamation had lots of whereases too. So that's
It did.
But other than that, I've been working on a lot of stuff, but I haven't had a lot of meetings. So this is where Dave Mills would say, "Oh, one more thing," but he's not here.
Yeah.
So
The county
we
has
are.
to deal with that now.
Yep, we are adjourned.
See you tomorrow.
All right.
Awesome.
For those of you
Thanks.
who are coming.
Yep.